Okay, so our break has ended now. Let me just quickly go to our DMS dashboard and we can see that the task is ready. So as of now, the task is currently not started. But before that, let me just quickly show you our target here. This is my current target, and let me just show you the current relations that we have. As of now, we have no relations, and let me also show you the schemas. As of now, you can see that there are no relations, there are no schemas inside the database. And now let me just quickly start this migration, and let me show you how it can be done. So in the actions tab, I clicked on restart/resume to start this task, and we can see that the status of this task is currently in starting phase. Okay, while this task is running, it shouldn't take a lot of time. Let me just quickly discuss a couple of questions that were asked during the session. Uh, our one of our asker, Ankur, asked few of my teammates were not able to get the registration confirmation. Is it possible to record? So unfortunately, the sessions are completely confidential to this particular session, so they'll not be recorded. But if your teammates are facing any registration challenges, please feel free to contact your point of contact in AWS, your PSAs, PDRs, or PSMs, and we'll definitely assist you in that matter. Okay, a couple of more questions. All are generic question, no audio. That is fine. Okay. So Hemant is asking, will you be able to share the PPT? Unfortunately, sorry, Hemant, we'll not be sharing the PPT for this session. Okay. Okay, we have a couple of more questions uh, which are which our panelists have already answered. Okay, no worries there. Cool, no problem. So we see that as of now, the status of this task is running with errors. So let me just quickly show you how you can check those errors. So if I go to the task and if I select the overview details, I reloaded the page, so it's reloading currently due to some network issues. Okay, just one second, let it load. Mm, Okay, so let me just quickly go to view log section. So from your console, if you see, you'll be able to get this button which takes you to the CloudWatch logs where the DMS logs are created, and you can debug those logs using this view logs section. So while that is being loaded, let me just move to the table statistics part. Okay, seems like some bandwidth constraint here. Okay, so we can see all the schemas and all the tables are listed here, and it shows table completed for most of the tables, but it is showing table errors for a couple of tables here. Okay, so no worries there. We'll troubleshoot that as well while these logs are currently being generated. No worries around that. Okay, so now if I go to the logs, I can understand that it can be a little bit confusing in the beginning to look at all the logs here. But what I can do is I can show you a couple of logs here. Okay, cool. So now that our logs are generated, we can see it shows all kinds of logging here. It shows you that all the tables are loaded, whether you have primary keys or not, and all sorts of thing that you might need at some point of time in order to debug this particular task. So in these logs, all the errors, if you want to filter those errors, this is basically just a hack that you can use. You can use bracket E colon option to select the errors I'll show you why I'm using this filter. Okay, so what you can do is you can use this particular filter in order to filter. As you can see, all the errors have this particular string in it. So I've filtered this error, and I can see that MySQL dot this particular table doesn't have supported data type, cannot refresh source table. So all these errors are currently visible on the CloudWatch logs, and you can use these logs to troubleshoot your task as well. So I'll not go into more details about the error itself, because error will generally be source engine specific, target engine specific, and that is not something we should be discussing in the session. So I'll just show you the table statistics as to, don't worry, we'll resolve that part as well. I'll show you what are the table statistics currently. We can see that what happened during our migration is, since we selected all in our filtering rule, we selected all schema, all tables. It selected not only my manually created schema and tables, but it also selected the pre-built information schema MySQL tables as well. And you can see that the table errors, if I try to note down here, all the table errors are in the MySQL internal schema, which is completely fine, because the internal schema tables or internal tables that are there in a database engine would never be used in case of migration. Migration is performed for the data itself, for the database itself. These tables are used for MySQL or for your source engine to run properly, and that is the reason you are able to see these table error. Having said that, you can clearly see that the schemas that we created manually have now been completed. All the tables have been successfully loaded. So if I try to go into the right side in order to get more insights, I can see that these amount of rows were migrated from source, and the validation state, since we enabled validation, it shows that couple of tables have already been validated, but couple of tables have couple of records that are still in validation process. No worries around that. In case there is any validation failure, you will see validation failed or validation suspended here, and you will see the error message in validation details section as well. Let me just quickly go to the Postgres target, and let me show you what is the current state here. So we saw earlier that there were no schema, no tables earlier. Let me see here. Okay, so we can see the schemas have now been created. Let me just show you the tables that have been created in this schema. Okay, sorry about that. Sorry for the. Okay. Okay. Okay, so it's search underscore path. Okay, so we can see that inside employees schema, we have all the tables that we were trying to migrate using our DMS task. Okay, so what else? Let me just show you the CloudWatch metrics that we discussed earlier, through which you can monitor your task. So similarly to how we saw in RDS, Aurora, Redshift, all those metrics, let me show you the CloudWatch metrics that are available in DMS. So you can see that there are a couple of metrics available for your DMS task, like the full load, the migration throughput, bandwidth, the number of rows that you have migrated, and you can also leverage other metrics by using this filter. Since we have not enabled CDC or replication in this task, no point in checking those, but still you have a lot of metrics, and the meaning of each and every metrics is provided in our online documentation. You also have validation regarding regarding metrics as well, which will show you if any error has occurred, or in what are the successful record count, and all those metrics are available as well. Then we have the mapping rule. In this, we selected all the schema, all the tables, and that is the reason we faced that error. You can have this. You can just cross check here. You can see the transformation rules as well. This is just JSON that you can use for your selection rule. Okay, then comes the assessment results. So you can also assess a particular task in order to get more insights about your task. Since it is failed, let me show you the assessment results here. It might take some time, some couple of minutes for the assessment to complete, but you can get even more detailed report about your DMS task using this assessment result. Okay, while that is being going on, let me just quickly go to the question section and let me see if there are any couple of more questions. So Maheshwaran has asked, does the DMS supports NoSQL migration also? Yes, indeed. DynamoDB is one of the source, and the MongoDB is also one of the source target that you can use. So your answer is yes. Uh, Couple of more. Okay, so Prashant has asked, which is a very good question. Please, can you let us know more about the DB Freedom Initiative? So, DB Freedom Initiative is basically wherein AWS assists our customers in migrating or moving from commercial-based databases to open-source databases like MySQL, Postgres, MariaDB. We have dedicated teams as well for that, and we have online resources as well that you can leverage in order to perform those migration. As far as partners are concerned, you can you can contact the POCs that you have in AWS, and we can connect you to the teams, or we can educate you more about that as well. We have another question wherein one of the guys have asked whether the DMS replication instance is a jump server or not. So don't understand replication instance as a jump server. It's more like a host where your migration is performed, as simple as that. But if you want, you can consider it to be a relay agent, but it's not exactly the same. If DMS service ID only useful for RDS machine, or else on-premise SQL server to. Okay, seems like not able to understand. No issues there. Okay, so these were a couple of generic questions. As well as specific questions are concerned, our teams have already tried to answer it. Okay. So the task is currently in running state, and that is why we are not able to see the assessment report. But no worries there. You will be able to see that soon. Okay, cool. So Sunil Kumar has questioned, do we need to manually delete the replication instance when the migration is done? Very good question. Yes, Sunil, you are absolutely right. You will need to manually delete those replication instances. You are not charged for the source and target endpoint because it's just a configuration, but you're charged for the replication instance resources. So yes, you will have to delete those replication instance. Uh, Okay, so Neeraj is asking, so the flow goes like source to replication instance and replication instance to target. Indeed, you are right. The flow is something like this only. The data will be picked from the source. It will be stored in the replication instance. And then after performing your transformations, filtering rule, all those things, it will be migrated to the target. Okay. Okay, a very good question from Aurobindo Saha. He says you mentioned that no agents need to be installed in source side, but as mentioned in below URL, you need to install SCT agents as are required to be installed at source as well. So as far as SCT goes, I'll discuss more about that part in tomorrow's section. But as far as DMS is concerned, you don't need to install any such agents for DMS. Selva Kumar, sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, has also asked how can we exclude a default schema from the DMS task. So when we were creating the task, this rule was already there where we feeded all types of tasks and all type of tables and migrations to be all types of tables and database to be migrated. Okay, seems like the task is still running because we selected quite a large database, but don't worry, we can cover this during our tomorrow section as well. So these were just a couple of details about the DMS task, and you can how you can leverage DMS for your migrations. Okay, cool. Let me just quickly go to the next couple of slides, the ending slides before we end the session, which are quite helpful. And I've gathered this from multiple feedbacks from our customer. What are the migration scenarios where you can use DMS alone, where you should use SCT and DMS as a combination, and where you can leverage native tools. So you can use DMS alone in case you only want to migrate the tables and primary key. You don't want to migrate secondary indexes, foreign key objects, or secondary objects like triggers and all those things. In that case, you can go for DMS. In case you want to migrate those secondary objects also, you want to assess the migration, you want to get guidance, more detailed report, you can go for SCT with a combination of DMS you can use for migrating your data, SCT for assessment and creating the schema on the target. You can use native tools as we discussed earlier in case you want to go for a simple homogeneous migration, you can go for that. We discussed about the steps to migrate. We created the source endpoint, target endpoint, the replication instance, then we created the task. So once the task is completely finished without any errors, you can point your application to the target, a basic diagrammatic view of how it's done. So the source is connected to the replication instance, and the replication instance connects to the target. The applications are currently connected to the source. Once the data is transferred to the target, you cut over the application from source and you point it to the target. So load is done table by table. It's not done schema by schema. So the replication instance picks up a table and puts in the target. It's done table by table. The changes, the CDC replication changes are taken from the transactional DB logs. For example, binary logs in MySQL, these kind of transactional logs are used for getting the changes that are happening on the source in case of CDC, change data capture. Okay, so a couple of more pointers regarding CDC. When it comes to Oracle, supplemental logging is required in order to CDC to go through. In case of MySQL, you need to have row binary logging in order to CDC to continue on that part. For SQL Server, you need to have recovery model bulk logged or full. For Postgres, these are the couple of parameters that you need to set on the engine level for the CDC to work. So don't worry if you're not able to understand this. This is completely a DBA kind of information, which is completely available online in our public documentation. These are a couple of more scenarios where you can have one source and you can migrate it to a couple of targets. Maybe you want to split a source in multiple options. A very common use cases, I've seen customers moving their on-premise RDBMS to RDS and moving a couple of workloads to Redshift for analytics workload. You can do that using the same replication instance by creating multiple tasks. Then you can have multiple sources which are collaborating and which are feeding in data to one target. And then comes the generic one where you can have multiple sources and multiple targets that you can leverage using the DMS service. So you don't have to take everything out of the source. This is an advantage of replication instance. Even in case of homogeneous migration, the native tools might not be able to support filtering, but the DMS can be leveraged in that. Just a couple of tables if you want to migrate, you can do that as well. You can perform homogeneous as well as heterogeneous migration. So when it comes to a large amount of size, when it comes to the size of the database, if the size is going quite high and the changes are quite high, you can leverage a snowmobile or the snowball in those cases as well. So ultimately, it comes to the testing part. You'll have to see, you will have to assess using SET how you can leverage DMS for bigger tasks as well. These are a couple of pointers that I have seen in my tenure with the DMS service that I would recommend to you. First thing is, always try to enable CloudWatch logs, which is not enabled by default, so that you can debug your task. The second thing is choosing the log mode is very critical. Sometimes choosing full log mode might lead to performance impact, and sometimes choosing limited log mode might lead to truncation of your data. Ensure that your replication instance is having limited security, limited permissions, limited access, so you can leverage security groups for that. You can also leverage extra connection attributes in case you want to feed in any values to the connection that is being made from the replication instance. Like if you want something regards to SSL for source or target, you can do that using extra connection attributes. You can see all the attributes and the meaning of those attributes in our public documentation. You can also have transformation rules, and do ensure that the transformation rules are set as per your requirements. A couple of database engines are case sensitive, so it might be possible for you to leverage transformation rule for that as well. Couple of tips when it comes to the configuration of source. When it comes to Oracle, we'll also have best practices session on Oracle and SQL Server. But just to let you know, you need to enable supplemental logging on the tables that do not have primary key when it comes to Oracle, because this is quite a general scenario where customers are moving from Oracle or SQL Server to open source database more and more nowadays, like MySQL, Postgres, and MariaDB. So in that case, if you're using Oracle as a source, you need to enable supplemental logging on your primary key. If you have a table, if you add a table during the migration, during the DMS migration, you need to add the supplemental logging to that as well. Even if the table has primary key, you can do that using DMS as well by adding an extra connection attribute called add supplemental logging is equal to y. This will allow DMS to add it automatically. You can also leverage SCT to understand what are the unsupported data types of your migration, and you can also use read replica of your source engine as a migration source. So what you can do is the production workload will be served using the master, and you can have a source replica that you can use for migration. Couple of performance tips. We have dedicated database blogs for performance tips, but couple of tips here. First thing that you need to do is you need to ensure that none of the resources from the replication instance are being throttled. The compute, the memory part, all these resource contentions need to be mitigated for the migration to occur successfully and in a timely manner. For that, you can leverage the CloudWatch metrics. Let me just quickly show you those metrics in our console as well. So if I go to the replication instance, I can see the CloudWatch metrics of these replication instances as well. So you can see CPU utilization, swap, usage, freeable memory, free storage space, the latency, IOPS, and all those metrics are available on the console. Okay, moving to the next slide. Okay, cool. So this was it as far as the migration is concerned. So thank you everyone for joining today's session. Tomorrow we'll also be discussing more about SCT and best practices when using Oracle and SQL Server in AWS. Feel free to join that session as well. The session will be around 1 to 2 hours tomorrow. Looking forward to joining that as well. In case you have any follow-up questions on this, please do not hesitate to contact us any point of contact in AWS, and we'll definitely support you. Thank you everyone for joining today. Have a good day. Please take care, and you can now log off. Thank you everyone.